Hello, once again, glad to have you here.
Hello.
So let's just start in the middle. So what brought you to the CECIA project? How did the idea at first arise?
Well, I think that since this was your idea, you should probably take this question.
Yes. Actually, in 2018, I initiated another project I conducted in Graz, where we are based. And the idea was to make an instrumental piece of music composed by different composers. We didn't have any resources for that project. It was totally an initiative, and I found 8 composers that were willing to work in such a crazy idea. And we worked about 4 months, and we were able to finish the composition. And that was a first sign that such an idea can produce some interesting results. And not only in terms of the final composition, which was a nice written, composed piece, but also in terms of research, of posing interesting questions about the nature of authorship, about the nature of creativity. And after finishing this project, because we are both have a background in electronic music and also a background in artificial intelligence, but yeah, and also in electronic music, computer music, we work also with algorithmic composition. So we use generative systems that generated material which assist us, or we create autonomous systems that generate sound. And this is a kind of a mindset that we have to use technology in order to assist our creativity. And it was not a distinct link to have a project that enables collaborative composition, and then introducing also some algorithms that also assist this process.
So just to make this point clear also to the audience, this basically means that the first project also made use of a so-called cloud computing platform?
No, the first project we just, of course, we used the internet, but we didn't have a platform. So we just used emails to exchange the scores, because we work with scores. And as I said, we didn't have any funding to make any platform. So we are very happy in this occasion that we are able to implement a tool like that.
And how does it feel for the composers to all of a sudden throw away their authorship? Well, let's say they don't throw it away, but they share it. Yeah. Can you share your ideas on this?
Yes, well, this is a very intriguing question. It's a very difficult matter because the composers are not trained to function like that. Because, I mean, if you're an instrumentalist, you learn from the early years of education to play with others, to share your sound, your interpretation, and to be able to collaborate with your fellow instrumentalists. The composer doesn't learn that, so it's not in the education, but it's not impossible. It is possible to collaborate with composers, as there are numerous examples in history of Western music of very famous composers collaborating at one point in their career to create with other composers. I mean, actually, my approach is to create a kind of very formalized system that it's somehow robust in the sense that it will produce finally a composition. And that is maybe quite problematic in the first project that we have with the composers, because in order to function very systematically, this framework, the composers feel a little bit not so free as they are when they freely compose one of their pieces. Actually, we learn a lot from the previous project, and in this new project, we put more mechanisms that allow the composers to feel and be actually more free, and also discuss with their fellow composers. For example, the first project, we didn't have this possibility. In the first project, the composers, they only exchanged musical scores. They didn't talk with each other because we didn't have the platform. But now we have the platform, we have a forum, and the composers, they already have started talking to each other, and they get known, and we hope that they will not feel so much restricted, and they will be willing to share their authorship. Yeah, that's what you have to want.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in some cases, what you lose in control, you gain in interactivity. So of course, the composers lose some of their control over the final result, but also they benefit from this exchange with others. So many of the composers, for example, in the first project had to work with material that they would not have chosen themselves, but they had to adapt and they had to get out of their comfort zone and they had to think in different terms. So, and one of the things that this type of projects, of course, explore is alternative types of authorship, where you don't have a single author. Here we have a collective authorship. I mean, this kind of traditional notion of authorship has also been questioned in participatory and interactive art, for example. Well, the audience also becomes an author in a way. So I think there's a lot of interesting things happening when not a single author, but several authors come together and create a piece of music together.
So which kind of artistic choices can be made on this cloud computing platform so that we can visualize it better?
So the conception phase, for example, the initial phase of the project takes place through the forum. The composers will exchange ideas about the main concept of the piece, the main idea of the piece. But I have to say that the forum actually was proved out to be necessary after the first project that we did, where people would just send their excerpts to us and we would just create an online form for them to evaluate each other's contributions. But there were always questions like, oh, you can't use that playing technique with that dynamic, or you can't really do that. So they were always writing back to us with questions, and they really, this thing was missing from the first project, for people to be able to exchange ideas and talk to each other, not just communicate with each other through the musical fragments, but also verbally. I don't know if you want to add anything.
So on the forum, which is part of the CECIA.net, you can then start to discuss the overall idea of the composition, and is this overall of the composition something which goes back to the form or the tonality or the instruments you have to choose, or is it something, let's say, which is external, like point of reference? I mean, we know lots of electroacoustic composers who frequently refer to, let's say, the Greek mythology.
Actually, we don't know yet, because the composers they now start talking about it. Actually, it's quite open. They can pick whatever theme they want to work on. I mean, could be a conceptual thing. They could be an image, a video, a poem that inspires them. That's the idea, that they should talk to each other and find what is common and what is inspiring for all of them. Or maybe they can work on specific sound qualities of a specific sound source. For example, that could be quite relevant for the project. But we hope that there will be enough dialogue so they will be able to find something that fits on their aesthetic.
And we also hope that there won't be too heavy fights going on in this regard. Yes. I mean, what will happen if they start to fight on the forum? I mean, okay, so you're the project moderator. So you
yes.
then have to moderate and to calm them down, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I will play this role to try to guide things in a more convenient areas of discussion.
Mm-hmm. And if worse come to worse, is it you making the ultimate artistic decision, or is it then based on, let's phrase it differently, on which democratic model would you say your project is based on?
Yes, we use actually a democratic process. So the composer, they're going to propose ideas almost in every phase. Only maybe in preparation phase, but on the other phases, each composer is obliged to propose an idea, and then it's obliged also to vote for all the other ideas. And we're using a majority rule model, actually, which one receives the majority preference points, then this concept or recording or fragment will be accepted and adopted. And of course, we have also, for example, in the revision phase, things that they can be changed also. I mean, it's not everything definite what is happening, but there is a possibility in the future to change. If we think that something doesn't fit in the end, I mean, we decided some points that, I mean, the composition develop in this direction and then it goes somewhere else, there is a possibility in the revision phase to change some things.
And now that I know that you try to identify artists working in different fields, so not exclusively academic composers and also not exclusively sound artists hailing from the free scene, how do they actually manage to find a common language? Or, okay, you cannot say it yet because it's too early.
Yes, exactly. We just started. I mean, now they are everyone friendly with each other, and yeah, we hope that they will find a common ground.
But also the vocabulary, because there's a very specific vocabulary existing in the electroacoustic compositional realm, right?
Yeah. We will in the forum we'll post also some literature of electroacoustic music that could be benefit for. I mean, the most of them they will know that already, but maybe some not. But it will be good to have a common language, and I mean that could be necessary. You want to say something?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we purposefully selected composers from different backgrounds. Some have a strong academic background, some have a stronger artistic background, and there's people that come or are very strongly influenced by the acousmatic tradition, and some sound artists that are more influenced by the noise scene. So we have a lot of different aesthetics in there, but I think that the piece that will result from this process will not belong to any single aesthetic. It will be the result of kind of a collective identity, as I mentioned earlier. And the network itself will develop its own identity and its own aesthetics, which I think will be a mixture of all the things.
And why did you make this decision of choosing artists coming from different fields of artistic application? Was there an overall idea, or is it your actual position that now the field in some way starts to open up?
Well, actually, it was because the research questions all relate to aesthetics, and we really want to track aesthetic decisions, and especially the machine learning part is just really tracking aesthetics. We're just asking ourselves, can we use machine learning to just decode the aesthetics of these composers, or the collective aesthetic that will emerge through their individual identities? So that was really the main focus in this project, and that's why we ended up selecting composers with different personal.
Yeah, and I think a group composed of different opinions will be more robust. I mean, and also it's the point of the project. If we would choose composers so that they have the same aesthetic, the same background, then maybe was losing the point of the project. Maybe it will be also boring for the machine learning algorithm to learn new features, new things to learn. I mean, also the notion of surprise is very important, and maybe you don't get that from a group of composers of the same ideas. We have this experience on the last project we did. We have also, of course, instrumental composer was some common feature that they all have studied in Europe, for example, but they're quite different composers. I mean, totally different aesthetics. Okay, in the area of instrumental composition, and we have in the middle of the piece a very surprising moment where one composer proposed a totally different technique, a theatrical element actually, and then it was accepted, and then all the composers start using this technique further in the composition, and it was very important because we asked them afterwards if they use material that they don't use in their personal artistic practice, and they all answered that yes. And I think it's quite interesting, and we hope that this will happen also in this project.
Yeah, that's really interesting that the perspectives of the artists then apparently they got extended, one could say.
Yeah.
So that maybe they even had some artistic benefit from the project, learning from all of the other artists who are not from the exact field.
Yeah, definitely. This kind of project it has also educational value, in my opinion. I mean, it could be used also for young composers which are willing to learn new things, and this is a very playful situation where they can learn new things.
Mm-hmm. So it's also interesting that this project takes place as part of the Interfaces project, and it's basically the initial idea of the Interfaces project to discover, let's say, interfaces to new technologies which could potentially enrich music composition, but also new aesthetics, new approaches, new formats, and so on and so forth. So that's very nice that you actually proposed the project to us so that we can now put it or bring it to life during the next month. I would now make a major jump, and so far that I would like to confront you with this big hype topic of these days, which is basically artificial intelligence. So the initial decision to include machine learning algorithms, when did this pop up, and what were the initial reasons for including artificial intelligence algorithms in such a system?
Okay. Okay, maybe we'll start and then maybe you can take over. As I said, we have a background in computer music, which we have worked extensively with generative systems, interactive systems. And this is, we think like that, we tend to extend our creative output through algorithmic processes. So we do that in our personal artistic practice. And then secondly, I think it was quite easy how we designed the framework of collaboration to include external agents like computer algorithmic agents. So it's, I mean, technically it was possible, it was feasible. We have the intention of our background, so that's why we end up going in this direction. Why machine learning and not other stochastic processes? Because machine learning, they are more adaptive, so to say. They learn some features from the data that you provide to them. And there is this assumption that they will be more beneficial in a situation like this. So maybe you want to add.
I have to say that I wasn't convinced from the beginning that machine learning had a place in this project. Even though I work a lot with machine learning also in my own compositional practice, I'm very critical of artificial intelligence and the way it's sometimes used in music. So, for example, I find that a lot of the automatic composition systems that I referred to earlier are not reflected enough aesthetically. So, and of course, it's been proven by many automatic composition systems so far that so none of these automatic composition systems has passed the Turing test. And what is the Turing test? Well, the Turing test in the case of music would be that if I make you listen to some music, you have to tell me if it was composed by a human or a machine. And if you think that the machine was a human, that means that the machine has passed the Turing test. So its output is indistinguishable from a human-made music. So none of those systems so far has passed this test. Actually, the output seems to be quite bad at the moment. So in that sense, I was critical towards it because I'm using machine learning in my own practice, but not to make high-level aesthetic decisions. I work a lot with interactive music systems. So I compose for interactive music systems that involve a human performer and an intelligent agent interacting with the human performer. But of course, all the important aesthetic decisions are made by me. So I am always critical towards delegating important aesthetic decisions to the machine. I started to get convinced that this was in fact a good idea when we came up with this model of a complementary relationship between the agents and the composers instead of a competitive one, because I thought that this is something that can benefit the composers and will also benefit the machine learning algorithm. So the machine learning algorithm will try to learn from the humans. So I think this is a win-win situation in the sense that we make some progress regarding the algorithm. We have to observe the algorithm, how well it performs, if it learns during the project. So does the machine learning algorithm or the output of the machine learning algorithm get better during the project or not? And at the same time, the machine learning algorithm just generates some musical excerpts, and it's up to the humans whether they will use that or not.
So two questions now popped up in my head. So first of all, which features of the electroacoustic excerpts does the machine learning algorithm actually observe? So is it, let's say, the tonality or the timing, or is it the textural features of recorded sound?
So there's a lot of features. The most important are, there's also some machine listening involved. So the machine learning algorithm analyzes the sounds used in its musical fragment. And it tries to see, for example, how the composer moves through timbral space, if there is such a thing. So imagine if a composer uses a sound and then uses a perceptually similar sound, a spectrally similar sound, or if they go from one sound to a very contrasting sound. It also observes how form evolves. For example, the density of musical events and how the density changes over time. So it's basically extracting features that have to do with form.
When the project will come to its end, which will be probably in November, in December, okay. When the project will come to its end, will they derive a model from this, which you will then have trained, or, I mean, because the machine will probably get smarter and smarter, learning from all of your achievements or mistakes or whatsoever. So what would you say? What will derive from this in terms of the machine learning algorithm? Will it get improved, or not the algorithm itself? Maybe you rephrase the question yourself, because you will probably be able to phrase it better. But I think you know what I want to say, right?
So that's what we are trying to see, really. We don't know. I mean, the hope is that it will get better through time. On the other hand, we have a lot of difficulties in this project. For example, the algorithm will just know the average of the evaluations that its composer gives to a certain fragment. And we have to see how much deviation there is from this average. So, for example, we have already run some tests and we have used some excerpts that we have composed ourselves as material, and we have evaluated it. And our evaluations were really different from each other. So that's also interesting. And another idea is, of course, to train the machine learning algorithm with its composer's individual preferences. So this is another way to go, and we might do that. So we haven't started the machine learning part yet, but this is also an option, because it's really hard to derive a single evaluation from 5 composers with very different aesthetics. But yeah, the goal would be that the machine learning algorithm would get better at predicting and understanding the aesthetics of the group by the end of the project.
Yeah. And I want to say that what we are developing, the algorithms are very context specific. I mean, they don't be relevant or interesting for someone else outside the project. So no one will take this, how we train this algorithm, and then, I don't know, put pop music, and then she expects to get a pop song or whatever. I mean, it's not going to work. It's very context specific what we are doing.
So I won't be able to, let's say, copy your sound in December?
copy sound.
I mean, so I won't be able to use the machine learning algorithm fed with all of your data after December?
You will be able to do, but I don't think I don't know, maybe it could be interesting for you to do something like that. But in our case, it works in a very specific framework. And that's the idea, that we contextualize the machine learning functionality so that it will make sense. I mean, how Artem said that it's a win-win situation, that it learns from humans, and the humans also, well, not learn, but co-create with what the algorithm generates.
So what was your impression when it comes to the people who actually wanted to contribute to the project? And there were quite a lot. So the question is, what was the reason for the high number of people who wanted to contribute? Was it the interest in working collaboratively with other artists coming from other fields, or was it more the interest in the machine learning algorithms and getting the insights or getting associated to this project?
I mean, what we read from the motivation statements, the most common theme was the curiosity. And what is this project about? I mean, because it's very innovative, nothing like that have been done before, at least not so systematically. And yeah, I mean, there's these two aspects, working with machine learning and collaborate. I think the most composers were motivated about machine learning stuff, because they were thinking that maybe they will learn more and then will be able to utilize these technologies for their own practice. And of course, some of them were also motivated for the collaborative situation. Yeah. So it was both, I think, more weighted towards machine learning.
Okay, so then I will get, I will be very interested in following the process. So when I will visit the CECIA.net website during the next month, what will I be able to see as a non-participant?
Right. Next month, which should be September, we will finish the conception phase. So you could visit the specific topics on the relevant topics on the forum, so that you can follow all the discussion that took place. And you will see you will be able to see all the proposed concepts by the composers, and then you will see also which concept was most preferred by the group. And then we'll also start working with a preparation phase, and that means that some sounds will be already uploaded to the cloud, and you will be able to hear all these sounds and transformation of these sounds, and probably the evaluation of these sounds by the composers, but not machine learning yet.
And this is something which I would be very interested in. Will one be able to actually visit the forum even without actively contributing, but will the audience be able to see the discussions going on or the suggestions being made?
Yes, of course. That's the idea. Yes,
that's great.
That's the whole idea. I think, yeah, it's open. It's a public domain. And
okay. And so when this project will be finished and it will get premiered on the 13th of December, will you make some sort of evaluation afterwards?
Yeah, want to answer?
So yes, one thing that we certainly will do is ask the composers themselves for some qualitative feedback. So they will also be asked to evaluate our work, because what we haven't talked about so far is actually our creative responsibility and our authorial responsibility. So we have also made a lot of decisions for this project. For example, the whole evaluation scheme, like how do they evaluate each other, and how long the phrases are, so the musical fragments that they have to compose are, or even what kind of features the machine learning algorithm learns. And we have even selected the composers. So we kind of have some responsibility, even though it's we try to organize this, or we try to do this in an approach that is as bottom-up as possible. We want all the creative ideas to come from the composers themselves. But of course, in what we are doing, there is a lot of creative responsibility in the end, and a lot of decisions that will affect the creative process.
So earlier, as part of your talk, you talked about coherency. So creating a coherent electroacoustic composition. And I stumbled upon this expression. So I was wondering, what does coherency mean in this regard for you? When will the electroacoustic composition deriving from your project be considered as coherent by you?
I think this term comes from because of how we structure the collaborative, the creation process, which actually is operated in chunks. You can think in iterations. And every week, actually, we will create half minutes of composition. And then we will do the same again. We'll create the second half minute of composition. And then the whole collaborative process works like an algorithm that puts chunks of music one after the other. Of course, there is a lot of feedback involved. These things are evaluated by all composers. The machine learning are contributing to that, etc. And the main concern we had also in the previous project is that we don't end up by getting a collage of ideas, one putting one after the other. That's why we build so many feedback review processes, and also the revision process in the end. And coherent in that sense means that actually exactly that it's not a collage of individual ideas that don't relate to each other, but it's more an organic continuation of sound. Yeah.
So I can also only imagine that if I would contribute to this project, that I would maybe get frustrated at some point if I would make so much contributions which might get just literally thrown away. So the question is it like this? Will they get thrown away? Or will we also, as an audience, be able to listen to the excerpts which you did not choose for the ultimate composition?
Yeah. Of course, all the material will be on the cloud, on the platform, so for everyone to hear, and also for the composers themselves to get, if they're out of ideas, to go and listen to all the material that we created in the early phase of the project. And yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that, of course, each week only one segment, only one fragment will be selected. This means that 4 composers will be rejected. But even if their fragment doesn't get selected, they still contribute to the creative process through their evaluation and by participating in the voting process. And not only that, but in the preparation phase, where the composers select the sound material that they're going to use throughout the composition, there is no voting, there is no evaluation. So everyone can select some sound material and put it on the online platform. And on the second round, the composers have to create transformations of other people's sounds. So everything is created collectively, even the initial sound material for the composition. Even if a composer is never selected throughout the process, they will have made a very important contribution to the piece.
For example, Stravinsky once said that you have to burn a lot of good ideas before you reach a very, very good idea. So I think it's also part of the democratic process that you get rejected. Rejected, not selected in that sense, but you contribute in any sense. You vote, and also if you contribute a fragment, it's rejected, but already have listened to that and evaluated that. Maybe subconsciously will play a role, and maybe we will take an element and we will use it in a subsequent iteration. It's of course this is a speculation, but we open the possibility of, there is a possibility of something like that can happen.
So now another jump. Let's talk about the cloud computing platform itself. So I was wondering, did you construct it on your own, or is this something which is pre-made and which already existed, or has it exclusively been developed for the CECIA project?
Yeah, exclusively not. We are not web developers, and actually I did a platform. I use some cloud computing services. I book a server so that we can have some storage. And I mean, this website I designed that they can provide this functionality that I described before. And actually, I took some templates and then I edited them a little bit code to adjust it exactly what this project needs. So this is how it was made.
Okay, very interesting. So just to make sure, the link is cecia.net. I mean, we frequently mention it here as part of this discussion. But anyway, make sure to have closer looks into this project. It will last, and you said it will last until December.
The project, but the website will be there for a long time. So after the project is finished, you will be able to visit and follow. All the material will be available. That was great.
May I just add? You asked about the fragments that won't be selected and how will they be displayed. And there was an idea, I think, to make an installation at some point where you can hear all the different branches of the composition. So you have, for example, an initial fragment, and then each composer proposes a continuation for this fragment. So we were thinking of doing an installation where you can hear all the possible branches of the tree and all the proposed material, even the one that was not selected.
Oh, that's also quite an interesting concept. So this is then something for 2020, possibly. So if you have some time left, I mean, and I recently discovered how many projects you are currently running. So a few weeks ago, I met a colleague of mine who I just talked about you and your project, and he already said, "Oh yeah, I'm also doing a project with Artemi Maria Giotti." It was a Klangforum Wien, so this was a funny situation. Because but this is now a little small excursus, but I think I will just mention it. It's really not that important, but 3 weeks ago, we had a composer here who had a residence, and she was called Marina Giotti. And here we have Artemi Maria Giotti. So you can imagine that there was quite some confusion going on here at the Hertz-Lab. Sometimes it's time for trivia, right? Okay, so yeah, I'm super excited to see what will come out or what will derive from this project. I hope you're still also as enthusiastic as you were a few weeks ago. Yeah, but it really sounds like a very good project, very coherent project already.
Or incoherent, we will see.
We will see, yeah, and it, yeah. So maybe one very last question, but it probably won't really lead to anything further. So I mean, if we now have the machine learning algorithm, which gets smarter and smarter, what would happen if we would feed back the sounds which we threw away or which got dropped? If they would get fed back into the algorithm, what would you expect then? Would the machine start to make autonomous decisions based on the preferences of the merged 5 composers? Or what could potentially happen?
So I'm not sure I understand the question, but in case this wasn't clear, actually the machine learning algorithm will learn from all fragments, even the rejected ones. Yeah. So the machine learning algorithm will essentially try to map the features that it extracts from the composed fragments to the evaluations that they receive. And in that way, it will try to see what kind of features get a higher score. And the idea is that the machine then will try to generate fragments that in its mind will receive a high score. So everything is valuable. Even the rejected fragments are actually even more valuable than the accepted ones. Yeah.
I have a maybe naive question, but can, let's say, can the inner workings of this machine learning algorithms or what it learns from the data, can this get deciphered in a way, or is it, let's say, sort of a black box And
yeah, it's hard to track what happens inside a machine learning algorithm. Actually, this is the concept, the main idea behind machine learning algorithms, that you don't have to describe the problem or the solution of a problem to the machine learning algorithm, but it just figures it out on its own. Actually, that's what makes machine learning so powerful. Think, for example, of an application like computer vision, like image recognition. Let's say we're training a machine learning algorithm to determine whether there's a cat in the picture or not. It would be practically impossible to describe in code what a cat might look like. It's practically impossible because consider the different angles that the pictures could be taken from, or the different light conditions. So what makes machine learning powerful is that instead of having to describe what a cat looks like, you just show the algorithm a bunch of pictures with cats in them, and it just figures it out on its own. But it is very hard to actually be able to go back and track what led the machine to think that there is a cat in the picture or not. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much for the elaborations on this topic. And so 5 minutes left. I'm now doing an experiment because at the moment we don't have the portable microphones, but I was wondering whether there are some questions coming from you. And you can also raise the question in the German language, and I will then translate it to English. So, and it's not obligatory to ask them anything, but now you have the chance. Over there. I was, you can ask in German or in English and I will translate it.
Do you all speak English?
Yeah.
Okay. How you distinguish, you said you have acoustic composers as well. So on the one hand you are in the field of sonic data, and on the other you are in the field of data abstraction, like metadata of sound, notes, tones. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with these completely different worlds?
Do you mean notes? No, there is no tones. There's no notes. It's an electroacoustic composition. So we're just working with some sound files. Yeah. And the machine learning algorithm is learning spectral features, but there is no notion of pitch in that. It's just the spectral descriptors, perceptual descriptors. Yeah.
Are there some more questions? Then I would, oh yeah, okay.
You talked before about identity, mm-hmm. and I was wondering how do you deal with this regarding that you have a kind of diverse group of mm-hmm. compositors and composers, and I was wondering how do you work with the subjectivity and related to what you said about computer vision mm-hmm. and the machine learning process. Sometimes it tends to homogenize everything. So homogenize, like make everything homogeneous. Yeah. Mm. And yeah, my question was about identity. How do you deal mm-hmm. with it?
So we actually really want to observe what will happen. We don't want to impose anything. We just want to observe the network and see if a common aesthetic will emerge or not. Maybe its composer just sticks to their aesthetics, and then we have an incoherent composition, for example. That's also a possibility. We just want to observe what will happen in the group. And with machine learning, it's still an open question because the machine learning will start after September, I think. So there is the idea of having a machine learning algorithm that learns sort of the average of the evaluations, that is trying to understand the aesthetics of the group. And at the same time, we could also use some parallel models trying to track the aesthetics of each individual composer. So this is still open, but yeah, regarding the collective identity, it's just something we will have to see.
So looking at the watch, I suggest we now call it night in regard to this talk. So thank you very much, Artemi.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Cosmos. So, and also to you, I would suggest that you can now sneak into the listening session, which will happen here a little later. We will present new co-productions played back directly from records. So we will present 2 new records which have been produced here at the ZKM Hertz Lab. So possibly see you later. And if not, I wish you a very good night. Thank you.